Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Khristine Valdez. Khristine is the founder of Haven Financial, and we're going to get into what she does and what the business does. But Khristine, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in. In the interest of full disclosure, we do work with Khristine's company ourselves, and Haven does provides a lot of support to our businesses. So thrilled to have you on, Khristine. For the listener out there who's unfamiliar with you, who are you and what are you up to today?
What am I up to today? Hi, I'm Khristine Valdez, owner of Haven Financial. We do outsource accounting services for small business owners. Who I am today, I am a business owner. I am a wife. I am a mom. I am a daughter. I'm a lot of things. Um, trying to do good in all those directions.
Yeah, like we briefly touched on before we hit record, it's being an entrepreneur and especially with a startup is not easy because
No,
last I checked, you don't have to put down your mom hat and your daughter hat and wife
no,
hat, etc.
they're,
Um,
they're all on all the time.
they're all on. So um, now, just before we jump into your backstory, Khristine, who is Haven? I know you touched on it, but more specifically, what exactly does your business do, and who's your ideal client?
Yeah. So what we typically do is we offer accounting services, outsource accounting services. Just imagine bookkeeping on steroids. A lot of what we do is the day-to-day work, but also provide really good reporting so that business owners can look at their numbers, make some decisions. Our avatar is typically, it ranges. It's a lot of what we do now is like the business owner that may have had some success in the past. Now they're on their second or third business. They're investing. They're seasoned, so they know what they're looking for. We've got a lot of real estate agents. We kind of have gone away from the business owner that's at that $6 to $10 million scaling fast type company and really
Mhm.
focused on the individual entrepreneur that really has a lot of things going on, right? And their
Mhm.
goal is to get organized. Their goal is to understand where everything's at because they've got things in different places. And so
Yeah,
we're trying to bring that organization to them.
sure, got it. Well, I can say that the reporting that you've provided to us is really fantastic. So we'll
Awesome.
dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the title of the show is From Adversity to Abundance. We're obviously going to talk about some adversity that you've been through.
Sure.
For the listener, let's jump into your backstory and kind of how did you get started in this space, and
Yeah.
let's focus on that piece of adversity that you and I briefly spoke about before we hit record.
Yeah. So just a quick background. I got an accounting degree. It was not my first choice. I had dreams of being a designer and all these different things. And I'm Filipino, so you're either going to be a nurse or an accountant. And that was driven home. And so, I ended up with an accounting degree and I went into the corporate world. And luckily it worked out, right? I was good enough at it. And then, when I decided to leave the corporate world and start on my own, I saw some challenges that I didn't know that people don't really know until they're really in it and really understanding how hard it is to start and run a business. Puts challenges on your marriage. It puts challenges on your own personal stress and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heavily challenges on your finances.
Got
So
it.
that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah. So give us some context with regard to how long were you in the kind of corporate world,
Yeah,
and a little more context as to what your life looked like, what your family looked like at that point. You
yeah,
don't have to tell us exactly how much you were making or anything, but
right,
just
right.
what did your life look like before you decided to make the leap?
Yeah, I was, for the most part, pretty happy. I loved what I was doing. I liked being challenged. I was a CPA at first, and then went to private, climbed the corporate ladder for the
Mm-hmm.
CFO for Telus Properties. That's where I met Sharon, our friend, and then
Mm-hmm.
the CFO for a private equity firm. And it was good. It was stable. But I did feel a little burnt out. I think that's
Hmm.
one thing that comes with the territory. And you're doing a lot of work as a CFO, helping to make decisions on behalf of the company, but you're not able to make those decisions yourself, right? You're
Mm.
just giving them the tools, giving them the analysis, giving them the data for them to make these decisions. And sometimes you don't even agree with the final decisions.
Hmm.
So, it came to a point where when you become an entrepreneur, you're in full control of your decisions, right or wrong, mistakes,
Sure.
everything, right?
Yeah.
So it was really great. I can't say that it was awful, but I think philosophically, in terms of what I really wanted in life, it didn't really hit the mark there.
So, and we don't have to go too far down that path, but as far as, were there decisions being made that you didn't that you thought maybe were unethical or that type thing, or was it more that you wanted that influence and that control over your own destiny kind of
Yeah, it
thing?
was never anything unethical. I think I really am an accountant by trade. I think if anything was unethical, I would have to leave. It,
Hmm.
it wouldn't be okay. But, I
Sure.
think when, um, put in situations where, cash is going to be this and that, and here's what I advise that we should do. And it's
Yeah.
still, things are still being done anyways. And I'm not pointing to any one owner,
Sure. Right. Right.
but
Understood.
it's hard to watch, right? It's hard to watch
Sure.
things that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now what did this, because some of our listeners haven't left their W-2,
Sure.
and we're not saying they should necessarily leave their W-2,
Right.
but speak to that listener who is either a brand new entrepreneur or they're just thinking about it. What
Yeah.
was going through your mind at that time, and how did you come to the conclusion that I definitely want to leave and start my own thing?
I think I think also inherently I have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. My
Mm.
dad had his own business growing up, and I
Hmm.
saw that growing up. And I think I just wanted some freedom. If
Sure.
I can kind of nail it down in one word, and freedom to make my own decisions, freedom to design my day, the freedom to,
Hmm.
anything, right? Anything that I choose to do in my life. And when I was contemplating, I can get into this more. I was at a crossroads where I either needed to find another corporate job or
Hmm.
start something new. And I
Hmm.
thought, well, I can just go get another CFO job and that'll be that.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'm not gonna do that. I'm
Hmm.
I'm I'm gonna try this out. And it was scary, and
Hmm.
it was hard, and but it was rewarding, right? It was
Hmm.
it was just all on me, and now there was no one else to blame, no one else,
Hmm.
it was what success or fail, it was going to be all on me.
Sure. Which can be scary, but also liberating at the
Right,
same time,
right.
because you do have some influence and control over how the outcome, what the
Right.
outcomes are. So was it a 5-year process in thinking this through, or was it a five
No,
day? What did this
it
look
was
before
thrown
you
in
quit?
my face.
Oh.
So I left private equity as CFO, and I did some like temporary consulting work. I was a director of finance for publicly traded company, and it was just going to be, I was just trying it out, right? It was
Hmm.
literally through an agency, and while I was there, I was poached within a week, right?
Hmm.
And so the person that was there was also saying, hey, I'm going to start an accounting company. I think you'd be great. You have this experience. And I thought, well, this sounds kind of cool. I'll be part of a startup. And
Yeah.
so I was brought on, other executives and managers were brought on all across the country.
Hmm.
And within 6 months, we were all let go. There
Wow.
was no forecast. This was an accounting startup that
Right.
didn't forecast anything. And within 6 months, like several of us were let go. And I was like, what the hell? Like, how did you
Right.
not see this coming? This is what we do
Sure.
for a living.
Right.
That's when I said, okay, well, do I go get another CFO job and throw my resume out there, and I'm sure I can find something?
Sure.
And I thought, no, I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to do that.
Just
I'm
start your
capable
own thing.
of my own
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
And that was it. That was the birth of it.
Got it. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want this to sound like cocky, but it's like, I think I could get another job if I needed to.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so say you start your own business and it fails in 12 months.
Totally.
I
Yeah.
mean, go get a job.
100%. Go get a job.
Right.
Go get a job. And I kind of knew that, right? And my husband, he was supportive. He's like, doesn't work out, you get a job, right? And the market was
Sure.
good right then, and I've got
Right.
all this
Sure.
experience. I'm an accountant by trade.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something,
Yeah.
so that it wasn't like I was jumping off this cliff and there was no safety net. I got anything to fall back on, right? So many things I could do.
Right. So, okay. So you decide to start your own business.
Yeah,
And I think we're about to get into some of the real adversity that you
yeah.
faced. So what did that look like for you at that time?
Well, it was definitely scary. I had
Yeah.
support, right? I had support, my family, my mom, my husband, everybody was believed in me. So that was to
Hmm.
to begin with, that was helpful.
Sure.
And I had started something in the middle of the Great Recession,
Hmm.
similar like a consulting. I was tired of an old job. I just started something. So it wasn't my first stint at starting something new, but
Mm.
what I did this time around is that my only goal was to get a client.
Mm.
I knew I needed to get a website up. I knew I needed to do some marketing. I knew it,
Right.
but I was not going to drop hours and hours and hours into a website. I just needed to get a
Sure.
client.
Yeah.
So I went and networked, and back then, pre-COVID, it was events and it was fun and all this good stuff. And I live in here in Orange County, and I was walking through kind of a strip mall, and there was this woman. She was a Pilates studio owner. So I started talking to her about what we do and, how we could help her and give her some insight. And this is my first pitch, right? It's my whole thing.
Right.
Like, we can help you. It's going to be great. And, you'll know this and that. Whatever I could think of just to help her, because I knew we could.
Hmm.
And then she said, okay. So then I put a proposal together for her. And I just remember that phone call when she said yes. And I'm like, I got my first client.
That's awesome.
I got my first client, and
Yeah.
then I was
It's
like, okay,
huge.
that's it. That's good. That's huge. I know this is gonna work. And it was small, but it was just my first yes. And it
Yeah.
wasn't
It's
until like,
proof of concept, and it confirms for you
right,
that this can work.
correct.
You can do it once, you can do it again, right?
Yeah, right. But I'm still living off nothing, right? It's like
Sure.
I think the contract was like, you know, maybe like $1,000 a month or something. So my first one, right? I've got a family, I've got a
Mm.
mortgage, I've got all these things, right? And I've got this just one contract, but it was just enough to like, okay, this is gonna work. This is gonna work.
Hmm. Now, was you know, you can get as personal as you want,
Yeah.
but was
Yeah.
your husband working or?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
he's had a few stints in entrepreneurism as well, but he's always, worked for big companies.
Sure.
So he's always had a lot of stability. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like we were both kind of figuring things out. He's
Right.
also unstable. And then
Sure.
starting out, it's like, okay, great, I have this one client, and now became, the hunt for the second and the third, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I still have to do the work.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
it was
right. Right.
it
Yeah.
was it was trying to find the balance between growing the business as a startup and
Yep.
providing good services.
Yeah. It's I can very much relate. It's you know, you got to deliver on the promise that you made
Right,
during your
right,
first pitch, right? You said all these
right,
wonderful things, and
right,
are you actually going to deliver? Or,
right,
but hey, you can't only do that because
right.
you'll sink your business if you don't
Yeah.
focus on business development and marketing and scaling. But I do love that, you know, I mentor some people a little bit here and there in mortgage note investing. It's not my main focus, but I do enjoy it. But sometimes, you know, people are they've never bought a mortgage note. They might have a lot of experience in other areas, but
Mhm.
you know, they're so focused on creating a website and
Yeah.
getting all this stuff. And it's like for marketing, what do you need the website for?
Right,
Let's get, like you did, Christine, you know, proof of concept. Let's get a client first. Let's do
right.
a deal, and then let's start to build out your presence online. And all of this is industry dependent, and it's,
Sure.
you know, it's not a one size fits all. But um, I love the approach is just like start small in a way and get a
Right,
client, and that
right,
way you're getting some income, and then you
right.
can kind of focus on how to scale because you can't do everything at once.
You can't.
So okay, so you got first client. So I mean, how long did it go where your business was really, you know, where you were on some, I guess, shaky financial footing, if you will?
For a while. For a
Okay.
while. Um, you know, Along those same lines, I think this was 2014 when I
Hmm.
started. And, I was starting to get some prospects and starting to get some really good prospects. I was going to do some, do some consulting work for Telus again. I was going to start doing,
Mm.
bigger projects.
Hmm.
And two big things that happened within the first 4 years is that my dad passed away.
Hmm.
So it started in like September. By
Hmm.
January, it was really sudden, and it just
Hmm.
threw everything off, right?
I
So
can imagine. Hmm.
so and it was fast. It wasn't like, oh, my dad was sick for a long time, and it was like,
Hmm.
it was fast. It was like he went in the hospital. He had, then we found out really quickly it was stage 4 lung cancer, and he
Wow.
was intubated within 11 days,
Wow.
and he passed away. So I had this really traumatic experience, like 6 months into starting a startup. So
Sure.
I've got a startup. I'm trying to bring in clients. I'm trying to provide services. I've got this thing happening in my life with my dad.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then,
it's a
like,
lot.
coming out of that fog, all right, let's figure out how to build this thing all over again. So I stepped back into building all over again. And then, then we got pregnant with a second kid.
Hmm.
And so then now I'm like back into, like, I'm pregnant, I'm sleeping 4 hours a night, I'm trying to do all
Hmm.
these things. I remember going to a proposal, and I was literally 7 months pregnant, and they were just like, but I had to, like, show up. I was like, well, yeah, I could meet, but so
Right.
that had its own challenges. So the first 3 years were pretty rocky, which translated financially as well, right? You
Sure.
can't build. You can provide service, but you can't really build. And it's tough. That financial strain is, like I mentioned, it's tough on you. It's tough on your relationships. Um, and it doesn't allow you to make decisions consciously, which is what I wanted to get
Mm.
into, is that you're
Yeah,
just reacting. You're reacting to what's
sure.
happening around you. You're spending money here. Whatever you have left over, you're taking it for yourself. You're trying to pay your bills. And
Hmm.
that happened for about 4 years, I would say.
Hmm. Well, no, and there's a lot to dive into, and I'm glad you put some, actual quantity of time on it,
Yeah,
because it's very easy for us to say, oh, that must have been a rough couple of weeks you had there,
a
and
long
I mean,
time.
4 years is a long time.
Yeah,
And so, and it's not like after 4 years, it was just rainbows
right,
and
right,
butterflies, but,
right.
um, so looking back, before we get into kind of what you touched on with regard to being more intentional about, and
Yeah,
I think, maybe your, your calendar, et cetera, but looking back, and this isn't really fair, but looking back, what should you have done differently? I mean, what could you have done differently? It's almost an unanswerable question, because it's so much to juggle, and
yeah,
maybe it's nothing, but was a lesson learned, or what would you do differently during that 4-year time period?
yeah. Um, it's something that I kind of just, even just now, or I'm starting to, like, really sink in with, is learning to be patient,
Mm,
and learning and understanding that it's a marathon, right? As
that's really
business
good.
owners, we're like, I need now, 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 now. I need to get this now. I need to get website done, and now I need to go get a new client. I have to get this. It's like everything is now, and
Yeah,
that pressure
yeah,
is so much that we put on ourselves because we're
yeah,
trying to succeed right now.
sure.
And what
Hmm.
we need to learn is that, okay, the success takes time.
Yeah,
And if I can go back and tell myself that back then, it might have just taken the pressure off, right? To
right.
just, okay, it's going to take some time.
Hmm.
You don't have to
Yeah,
push, like, 1,000% every waking moment, so
right.
just to relax a little bit.
Sure. No, that's really good. And I've heard people say, kind of reframe the way you look at things, instead of, what if this happens? What if I don't have a successful business in 6 months?
Right,
No, just say, even if I don't, then I'll be okay. Or even if this, like we said earlier, even if this fails,
right,
even if I can go get another job, and that might help provide a little more of that patience. Because I
right.
get the same way. I mean, it's just, I may be quote unquote laid back, but,
You do seem really laid back, I will
I'm
say.
laid back, but I tend to be pretty impatient, and, results oriented as well. I think for most entrepreneurs, just tends to be, they're type A. They want to see,
Right.
because it is a lot of pressure.
So much pressure.
But yeah, being patient, taking the long term view. I think that's a big takeaway for me, as far as just that what you just said, and holding that long-term, having that long-term approach, and that helps with both successes and failures, not just,
Yeah.
because keeping everything in context, I think, is critical. But so as you navigated through those, and again, I'm saying 4 years, we know it wasn't
Yeah.
exactly 4 years, but that
Sure.
time period where it was kind of rocky,
Yeah.
walk us through sort of the end of that time period, if you will, and how things started to get more stable or more abundant
Yeah.
in your business.
Sure.
What did that
Sure.
look like?
Um, that's a good question. I went back to biz dev, right? And I feel like when I can get out of the work and get into the world, good things happen.
Mm,
We
mhm,
landed a really large client. This is a good and bad situation. We landed a
mm,
really large client just literally on LinkedIn. Like I built this whole thing on LinkedIn. I just had
mhm,
coffee after coffee with everybody. And so I just thought, well, we need to get out there. Let's go back to LinkedIn. And I did the same thing and then ended up meeting with great guy. He was a CFO of a fast growing, very large med spa. And, brought them in. And that was our first big retainer, right?
mhm,
So we went from these, ones and twos and $3,000 retainers to like a $15,000 retainer.
mm.
And it was like
Nice.
a big one now,
Sure.
but we didn't even price it right. We were putting so much
Mm,
time in that we probably could have
yeah.
priced it differently, but it was still our biggest one. And then, prior to COVID, we were a team of 10. We were growing. We were on our way. Finally on our way. We've got an office in Irvine, beautiful, nice little space. We've
Hmm.
got a team. I'm just doing biz dev. I got an accounting manager. She's got staff. We got the whole setup.
Hmm.
And COVID happens. And
Yeah.
March 14th, the lockdown happened here.
Mm,
By March 17th, our large med spa that had 15
mm.
locations shut them all down.
Wow.
And like everything came crashing down. It was like,
Wow.
oh my God, do I get a job? What do I do? You know what? And I had a staff and we had 5 people on that team. And,
Just for
you
that
know,
client, you're
just for
saying?
that client. I mean, they were doing some other small work with other clients, but
Sure.
five
Yeah.
people on this client.
Wow.
And we did have to let some people go. Some people went on their own because their home life was just crazy with the kids at home and everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then I thought, oh my God, I gotta start over again.
Hmm.
I'm gonna start
Wow.
over all over again. It literally felt like like
Wow.
there goes that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and it's like, I had a guy named Nate Costa on the show. He owns gyms and spas and things, and he's a good friend of mine and a great guy. And we talked about the impact that the pandemic had and the shutdown had
Yeah.
on his business, but we didn't talk about the vendors that he works with, or
Yeah.
we don't think about the ancillary effects, you know, of the bookkeeping vendor,
Sure.
or, other, had some pretty wide reaching effects for sure. But
Right.
so, man, that's, yeah. And so, I mean, there's not much, I mean, it sounds like most of your business was coming from one client, which I guess you could say, I'm not saying that's a mistake. You got to, you got
Right.
to do that, right? But
Yeah.
there is some risk there, right?
There was, and
Concentration
I
risk.
knew it too. I knew we had a lot in this client, and
Hmm.
and at that point we had, many clients that we've had for 3 or 4 years. So we had a nice base, but we just had this one big one that we're putting
Sure.
so much resources into.
Right.
So luckily, all of our other clients, and I do mean like a handful,
Hmm.
thrived. They
Nice.
thrived. So it was down to me and a few other people that were, and we got lean and we got
Yeah. Yeah.
good and we got better.
You rolled up your
We
sleeves, and yeah,
everything. Let's look at every single process we do. Let's make it faster. Let's make it better. And
sure.
we did that. And we went crazy on marketing. We just marketed like we were going to go out of business tomorrow. We just, and it worked. It's like
Yeah.
the universe hears you if you're putting it out there.
Sure.
It's and we did promotions and was slowly but surely, one after another, we started building back up again. But
Rebuilt.
it was a slow climb back up.
No, I appreciate the vulnerability, because it's, again, success is not a straight line up and to the right.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship has its ups and downs, and obviously, like we've said, that bleeds over into your personal life, your family
Does,
life, etc. Um, so what was that rebuilding? Was that a 2-month time frame, or what did that look like?
it was long. And the reason why I say it's long is I think it's because of the nature of what we do. Our
Hmm.
services aren't like super easy to sell, I think,
Yeah,
because it's really very specific. It's very sensitive. People
sure.
kind of hold that thing close to themselves. And
Right,
um, even if they're a business owner, if it's their personal finances, it really takes some mental, like getting over a
right.
hump to say,
It's
I
true.
need someone to help me with this, right? So I've always had challenges getting past that. So it slowly did come back. Um, and then, I'll talk about, I started working with Sharon on
Yeah,
a stronger level, right? So you and I know both Sharon Zaraza.
yeah.
Him and I met when we were at Telus Properties together. And
Hmm.
over the years, he had just referred business. Talk to Khristine,
Hmm.
talk to Khristine. She's going to help you out. And then we kind of made it real, We talked about it for a while. And then we shifted this business model, and you were part of the shift where
Mm.
where we were going to talk to the entrepreneurs that had a lot
Hmm.
going on versus the companies that were just really big. And the reason being is that because I will get tapped out. I could only handle a certain amount of clients for me to
Sure.
fix, process improvement. But if we can build a service that's attainable for everybody,
Yeah.
um, without me, and just build something
Mhm.
strong, that's the goal. So him and I
Right.
did that for the last probably 18 months. And that's another, okay,
Yeah.
changing the business model, we're going to
Sure.
fix things here. And then now this is where we're at.
Well, I think the without me part is critical, and there's so much I could comment on there. And as Sharon very well knows, the value of the business, the more you're in the business, the less value the business has when
Right,
you go to sell it, really,
right.
if I said that correctly.
100%.
But
100%.
so yeah, Sharon is awesome, and I do recommend the listener go check him out. He's got his own
Yes.
podcast. He's
So
got
good.
a lot more than a podcast. He's the passive income mastermind that I'm a part of. He is one of the founding members, and he and I don't have any kind of real formal relationship, but he's helped me quite a bit, whether he
Mhm,
knows it or not. So
mhm.
um, very smart with marketing and business development, and just business in general. But so did you have what was your was it is it a is he is it a formal coaching relationship you have with him?
It's a partnership. Yeah. And
Okay.
which was, and I'll be honest, like really scary.
Yeah.
Never had a
Yeah.
partner before.
Yeah.
Um, but he had been referring business our way for a long time, and he's like, well,
Right.
let's talk about this. Let's, talk
Yeah.
about making this real. And I was like, I don't know. Not sure, and he was like, hey, there's no pressure. And which is like, knowing Sharon, it's like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean?
Sure.
He's so smart. And so
Yeah.
I had to get over that piece. And now that he is in my corner,
Yeah.
he's like Yoda. I mean, he's just like Yoda. He can break things down very quickly. He can, see where things should go very fast.
Right.
Um, and I think he even like does it with baby steps with me. Like I think he's just like, okay, now do this. So now try this, and
Right. It doesn't give you too much to
doesn't get too
overwhelm
much.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm going to see him next week in
Yeah.
the in Scrub Island, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Any chance I get to pick his brain,
I
or
know.
or
Do it.
try to give him value somehow, but
Yeah.
he's a
He's
really,
amazing.
really smart. But so now, what does that look like with him though? Like on a regular basis,
Yeah.
not the business structure, but just do you have a call with him every
Yeah.
week, or how does that work?
So I think him and I are similar where we don't like to be tied to a lot of like weekly calls and all these different
Yeah,
things. We were doing, if I need him, hey, I need, to jam on something, he'll like,
yeah,
sure, but right now what we're doing is just trading Voxers every week.
sure,
And
yep.
and it's just
So
even that,
that's a audio message that you're
right,
right.
right.
Yep,
It's an audio message, it's an app, you hold the
yep,
button and you talk, right? And
right,
then so I'll do like a Monday and Tuesday. And then I'll just blah, 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 right? Here's what's
yep,
good last week, here's what bad last week, here's what I'm focusing on, here's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it'll be like 6 minutes, and sometimes I'll go on for like 13 minutes. And then a couple days later, I'll get his responses to things. He's like, that's good, that's good, that's good. Okay, why don't you try this? And I get off, it's literally like 7 minutes of him talking to me, and I'm like, it's like gold, right? It's just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
right. Okay. And that's all it takes,
Yeah.
right? That's all we're doing right now. And it's so powerful, even
hmm
just like having that little like conversation every single week.
Yeah. No, I've had a little bit of that with Sharon,
Yeah.
and it is just, yeah, even 10 minutes or 5 minutes, of
Huge.
him sending me a WhatsApp voice memo is like, I listened to it like 5 times just
Right, right,
to
right, right,
take notes. And
right,
so that's really good. And to be clear, this is someone who has had a ton of success in business,
right.
and he's, I think one company he took from 3.4 million to 3.4 billion, something like that.
In
Is
five
that right?
years.
In
In
5 years.
5 years. So
Obviously,
that's how it's, yeah.
he would push back and say it wasn't all him, which, yeah, it's true, but
It was a lot of him.
it was a lot.
I was there when he was brought on. So I was there before
Gotcha.
he was brought on.
Got it.
And then when
This
he
is
was, it's at Telus
Trellis.
Properties.
Tell
Yeah,
us. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yep.
And then when he did come on, I was like, who is this guy? Like, like he came from
Right.
like Goldman or something. He's like a
Yeah.
semi tennis pro or something,
Right. Yep.
and but he was so like humble and cool about it, right? But you can see where he was going. And then I left because I had my first child.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of that was him. He knew what he was doing.
Well, I watched his speech he gave at his alma mater at the commencement
Yeah.
speech, and he did say transformations don't happen in isolation. So I guess he would say that he had some support, but
He did. And the owners there, I know them too. They were fantastic. And just the group that he was leading,
mhm,
were strong.
sure.
Yeah.
So how did he see something in you later that, I mean, why did he
Yeah. I guess
want to work with?
so.
I don't mean it in a negative way.
No,
I'm
no,
just like,
no. Seriously, I think that was him too. I'm like, oh wow. Thanks. He would just keep sending business our way. I think because once he got out of that space and he was now this sought after business coach, he would
yeah.
go into these companies and be like, well, where's your dashboard? Well, where are your financials? Well, what do
hmm
you got going on here? Like,
Right.
and so then he would just be like, okay, call Christine. And people would call me and say, and I would do my pitch. They're like, okay, yeah, when do we start? I mean, that's
Sharon sent me. You
Sharon
don't need, you
said.
can
I mean, they would say
skip the pitch.
Sharon said, and I'm like, okay, okay, sure,
Right.
sure, sure. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of how it just kept happening.
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to the power of relationships, and, you know, I don't think he would have sent you business if he didn't see that you were
Right.
capable and did a good
Yeah.
job when he worked with you before. So I think it also speaks to producing quality work in the moment, right? And because a lot of people think, oh, this is worthless, I hate this job, or,
Right.
it's like, yeah, you might be frustrated, but do a good job because you never know who's watching right now.
That is a great
Um,
point. Yeah.
so, I mean, there's no way Sharon would have helped you build this business if you
Right.
really sucked at your job before. I
Right.
mean, let's
Right.
be
Right.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but okay, so this was, you kind of rebuilt for a second or third time, rebuilt
Yes.
for a second time, I guess, if we,
Yeah.
so then how have the last 3 years looked?
COVID was interestingly a blessing for us. Even though it was painful, it's like one of those
hmm
things, right?
Sure.
It's sometimes
Yeah.
things need to break to get better. And it really changed how we were doing things. We were solving problems with just bodies. Like, oh,
hmm
okay, there's too much work. Let's get a body in here. Let's get this.
Yeah.
And then it was so time consuming to train. And then there was, didn't work
Yep.
out, all these good things. But we got really lean and thought, all right, how do we stay lean? Like,
Mm.
how do we keep these margins super high,
hmm
give, awesome service and just be great? And that
Yeah.
was really what came out of COVID for us.
hmm
So we
Gotcha.
built an overseas team. I don't know if you probably work with some of them, Vanessa
Yeah.
or Aaron.
Starting to more. Yep.
They're amazing. I
Yep.
mean, just amazing. Prior to having them, we hired and fired 4 people in the middle of COVID. We had
Hmm.
so many issues with staffing,
And these
that
were people in the US that
in
you
the
hired and
US,
fired?
it was in the
Gotcha.
US. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So They say they could do the job, couldn't do the job. They said they wanted
Sure.
more money, didn't have, and there's so many different things that we were dealing with. And
Yeah.
we had dabbled a little bit overseas and I wasn't really for it. And I came across this company and we gave it a shot. They work our hours, which was rare.
Nice. Yeah.
And they're from the Philippines, which is, that's great. I'm Filipino.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and they're just so committed. There's no sense of entitlement. They're so devoted. They
Yeah.
Their work product like blows you away. You see some of their analysis, and me and Megan, our controller, we're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, wow, this is really good.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So we built an overseas team, and
Yeah.
then we're able to, find the efficiencies there and then pass that down with this new model. So now the pricing has come down. It wasn't always like
Hmm.
minimum $3,500 retainer. We're
Hmm.
able to like develop a program that hits the mainstream.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah, I've got three virtual assistants, Filipino virtual assistants on my
Okay.
team,
Yeah,
and they're fantastic.
yeah,
It can be some work depending on how you're kind of sourcing that talent, if you will.
sure.
Uh, we've I've had my ups and downs with hiring VAs as well. Right
Yeah,
now, I've got three rock star VAs on my team, and so
yeah,
and man, they're really good.
really good.
So yeah. Um, do you have any tips for the entrepreneur who might be thinking of hiring a virtual assistant for their business and how to approach that?
Yeah, we did things a few different ways. Ultimately, it's like a standard hire. You got to go through the process. We've been at first tried a few, and we're just like, all right, let's just give it a shot, and it was just kind of loose.
Yeah.
And then we started doing the full process, like going through the resumes,
Hmm.
doing multiple interviews, really kind of understanding who they were,
Sure.
and going that way, and just treating it like they are here, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
because you think, oh, they're over there. If I want to change my mind, I want to change my mind. But you've already invested all this time in training them, right? And you
Yeah.
just want it to succeed. So
Yep.
I would just tread carefully. I'm all for it. I think I think there's not just from the economic standpoint, but
Right.
there's a different mentality when you're dealing with, people overseas, right? There's
Yeah.
just a higher level of commitment. There just seems to be a higher level of
Hmm.
dedication,
Yeah.
that
I
we have
mean,
gotten.
right. I mean, it's there's a lot of competition for those jobs over in the
Right,
Philippines in particular,
right,
and
right.
let's face it, a lot of people in the U.S. are pretty entitled and a
So
little bit
bad.
spoiled and pretty demanding. So,
Yeah.
that
We
I'm
had
not
someone show
bash.
up to a client meeting like in her robe. I was like, what is happening right now?
Wow.
I know, I
Yeah,
know.
that's
I think she was
crazy.
cold, so she put her robe on. I was like,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So no, I mean, we've had, and I don't plan to move away from the VA, model at all. It's been
Yeah,
great. And the other thing to mention is, because you have this, I've seen this criticism. It's more on Twitter with, you know, where you have people trying to stir up controversy, but oh, you pay these people $5 an hour, and well, first of all, I know I'm paying more than that,
I
but
am too.
secondly, these are really good jobs for the
Yeah.
for them, and so to me, I just see it as a win-win all the way around.
It, I mean, you do the exchange, right? You understand, what they're getting. And, I'm a big believer in compensating well, right? If
Sure,
people are doing good for
absolutely,
you, you want to take care of them. And,
yeah,
they get bonuses just like our team gets bonuses, or,
yeah,
they've got a, allowance for, our team lunch. They get the same thing. They get everything that
nice,
happens here. And
yeah,
so they're grateful, right? They're getting not just their salary, but any perk, their
hmm,
anniversaries, their birthdays. We're sending them money all the time,
that's awesome.
because we're so grateful for what they're
Yeah,
doing.
sure, I love it. So as we start to wrap up here, I do have
Yeah.
some rapid fire
Okay.
questions, but before we get there, do you have any kind of overarching kind of lessons learned, or and we've talked about several, but anything
Yeah.
else come to mind as far as that the listener could take with regard to becoming an entrepreneur, scaling your business, wearing multiple hats? What's one or two things that kind of comes to mind
So many
when I talk about
things.
that?
I will say the first thing is is the marathon, right?
Yeah.
It's not a sprint. Understanding that it's going to take time, and not putting so much pressure on yourself, I think
Yeah.
is a big thing. And then the second thing, which is a big thing for me, is understanding what you really want out of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not someone that's really driven by a lot of money. I'm driven
Sure.
by time and balance.
Sure.
And I didn't want to have to ask permission to take my kids to the pumpkin patch. And I really wanted time. I really wanted
Yeah.
balance. And that was important to me.
Sure.
So really understanding like what is it that you want out of being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and making that happen.
No, that's really good. And I'm very similar. I'm not afraid of hard work at all,
Right,
but yeah, if my daughter has a graduation thing on Friday,
right,
and I'm taking the morning off
right, right,
because I want to.
right. Correct, correct.
Um, so yeah, that's awesome. And I know you have been kind of intentional about creating some boundaries with regard to your own work schedule. Can you speak to that
Mhm.
briefly?
Yeah, when I first started, I was like, I'm not working Fridays ever, and that didn't happen. I
Yeah.
was working all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But now we have gotten to the point where Mondays and Fridays are just no client meetings at all, right?
Nice.
And at all. So a lot of that's planning and
Sure.
and and calm planning, right? Cup of coffee and walking through what I need to do, maybe taking
Yeah.
care of some personal stuff. But those two bookends of the week
Hmm.
are mine,
Nice.
to use in a way that's helpful for me,
How
right?
you see fit. Yep.
How I see it,
Got
right?
it.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Awesome.
Thursday are clients and staff, whatever the clients need and whatever the staff need.
Love it. That's really
Yeah,
good. All
yeah.
right. You ready for some rapid
I'm
fire
ready.
questions?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
What's what is something that people misunderstand about you?
Ooh. Um,
See, I don't give you all the questions ahead of time. I got to
I
keep you
know,
on your
I know. You
toes.
didn't, I was looking for this. Um, I'm not really like an accountant, it's
Okay.
I'm
What
I'm
do you
I
mean
love
by
the
that?
arts growing up,
Got it.
I love playing sports. I've got a lot of hobbies. I play the
Yeah.
piano, I love to paint, I love to golf, I love to do all these things. I'm just not like
So
your typical
you can
accountant.
do the accounting stuff,
Yeah,
but it's not your passion per se.
it's not.
And
Business owners are. Oh, yeah,
well, to be honest,
entrepreneurs.
I mean, I think most, if I can generalize, I think most accountants and CPAs don't make good business owners.
Yeah,
And
right,
so
right.
for the most part, this is a broad generalization. I'm not putting anyone down, but
Yeah,
if you're really into spreadsheets and numbers all
yeah,
day long, you might not be the best at the human side of hiring,
yeah,
firing,
right,
scaling,
right,
marketing, etc.
yeah.
Um, what's one of your biggest regrets or failures? Doesn't have to be anything monumental, but just looking back, whether personal or business related, what's something you would do differently?
I'll do business. And it's probably the biggest regret I had. I know he was a friend of mine and we were handling his books for a long time, but it just wasn't getting the right attention.
Mm,
And I think, and this is why I kind of don't do friends and stuff anymore. And this is ages ago, but it just wasn't getting a lot of attention. And then when he went to like really look at things to sell, we really had to do some adjusting and cleanup. And it really kind of shined the light on, okay, nobody can be neglected, right? And I
sure.
think and I think it wasn't, and I think because it was a friend, right? It was
Hmm.
like, oh, he's for paying anything, everybody wants a deal,
Right.
and he's successful, he's stable, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of just, I had a staff person on doing it, and it
Hmm.
just didn't get what we needed. And so I think for me, I really try and stay away from a lot of friends and family type deals,
Sure.
um, because that's one thing that I wished happened differently.
Got it.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Um, if you were given $10 million tomorrow, whether it's Sharon who writes you the check or someone else, no, I'm just kidding. But if you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
Um, I've got a passion project that I'm just
Okay.
launching.
All right. What's that?
It's
You can
it's a
talk about it.
nonprofit. It's a nonprofit. I know we're running out of time, so I won't get into
Yeah.
too much, but it's a nonprofit for girls basketball.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
Awesome.
the quick and dirty is that I grew up playing basketball. I ran a women's basketball league in college because there was none to be had. And it was great. It was successful. And my 11-year-old is playing now and she wants to play, and there's no girls leagues
Hmm.
anywhere.
Oh,
There's
wow.
massive softball, there's massive volleyball, there's
Huh.
there's a gaping hole.
Right.
And if I had $10 million, I would create a national or international league
Awesome.
and gyms.
So cool. I've so many lessons. I mean, team sports were a huge
Huge.
part of my life before. And there's so many, life lessons that you can apply
So
from.
much, so much.
It's huge. So,
Yeah.
um, you may have touched on this already, but what's one challenge that you're facing in your business right now?
The marketing is not something that's easy for me.
Mm.
So
Well, that's
it's
why
and
why you're here. We're going to get this out to a million
great.
listeners.
Everybody needs to hear this. We did hire a new marketing coordinator, and unfortunately, over the years, I probably have signed and let go so many different
Mm.
marketing people, and
Hmm.
it's just been a challenge for someone to understand financial services. But I
Sure.
just hired somebody. She's great. She's eager. She's
Awesome.
fresh out of college with a business degree. She loves
Nice.
marketing. She's got the energy. So I'm really excited about doing that.
Yeah. And I imagine it is, like you said, it's people don't want to part ways. It's very personal type of
Yeah,
business,
it is.
with the
It
books.
is.
So converting
And the
that
environment.
marketing
Sorry,
to sales is just, I imagine, is
it's
a
hard.
challenge. Like you, and what were you going to say?
The environment's always changing, right?
Oh, sure.
It's
Yeah.
the email marketing and it's the social
Right.
media and it's who's what's the engagement and it's
Yeah.
always changing.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, all I had events and
Yeah.
events and coffee and all these good stuff, and it would just grow like that. But
Right.
now it's all different now.
Yeah. That's why you got Sharon. He'll keep you
That is
up to date.
100%. Yeah.
um, so if you were able to have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be and why? Doesn't have to be your favorite. It could just be one of 10 that you would like to have coffee with.
Historical figure.
They could be alive today. Someone that's not Sharon that you'd like to have a coffee with.
Um, probably probably the Dalai Lama.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I found, I grew up Catholic and prayer and all that good stuff, but probably found
Hmm.
meditation in like 2019, I think, and changed a lot.
Nice.
And
That's awesome.
like for a lot of places in my life, yeah.
Awesome. Um, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to someone just starting out in your career field?
In my career field,
Yeah, in the accounting career field.
um, I would take the time, pretend you're signing on a new client, and walk them through every single step of the process, and as if you were that client from beginning to end. And then look at every single piece that
Hmm.
needs to be developed along the way.
Hmm. That's really good, whether it's accounting or not. I mean,
Yeah,
um, really that's just a matter of empathy and putting yourself in the client's shoes,
right.
trying to understand their perspective. Um, that's awesome. So, how about a book or two that you could recommend for my
Oh,
listener?
Atomic Habits.
Love that. James Clear.
That's so
It's very good.
good. So,
Yeah,
so
it's
good.
awesome.
On the fiction side, Fountains of Silence and The
Okay.
Giver of Stars.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Um, we're about to wrap up.
Yes.
I think you alluded to it, but what does financial abundance mean to you, or what does having that allow you to do in your life?
Yeah. It's not necessarily I've got millions of dollars in my account.
Yeah.
It's really being able to make conscious decisions around spending.
Yeah.
And you spend as an entrepreneur, you spend so much of your time worrying about payroll or worrying about the expenses and am I going to make it? And that a feeling where that is like gone, no matter at what size you're at, because I know $10 million companies that struggle to make payroll also. No
Sure.
matter what size that you can have control and be conscious of your finances, just shifts altogether. And then that freedom that we talked about
Hmm.
earlier of
Right.
freedom in your decision, freedom in your finances, just not having that pressure on you goes away.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
Khristine Valdez, where can our listeners find you online?
Got our website, myfinancialhaven.com. It's our
Awesome.
website. On Instagram, I'm just Khristine.Valdez. And on LinkedIn, I'm Khristine Valdez.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
for the listener who's looking for potentially a new bookkeeping service or bookkeeping on steroids, because it is really more than
It is.
bookkeeping,
Yeah.
briefly speak about the kind of the solutions that you offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few packages, bronze, silver, and gold, and they're kind of geared around what the entrepreneur needs. I would say the majority of our clients are at that bronze level, which is perfect. They're getting their books reconciled on a regular basis. They're getting reporting at every month without fail. And then, we're still there. And then our silver packages, same services, but quarterly meetings. And then gold is monthly meetings. And then, so you're somewhere around there. I think we see you a lot more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You're trying to push me away, but no, I'm kidding.
no,
No, I'm kidding. Yeah,
no, we
it's
love working with you. We always talk
no,
about how great you are.
and I know from firsthand experience as well, you all can do kind of project-based work as
Yeah,
well
right.
to maybe clean something up.
Sure, sure.
Just asking for a friend. No,
Yeah, yeah.
but maybe even if it's not ongoing, I know that
Yes.
Haven can take on a big project to maybe clean up 1 year's books,
Yeah.
so to speak.
It's very common. It's super, super common. I think 90% of our clients start with a cleanup project. Some are 6 months, 1 year. We've had one that we just finished a 4-year cleanup. So a lot of that does a big cleanup, and then you go into a package, or you don't,
Yeah,
right? But at least you
sure.
have that done.
Like I said earlier, the reporting is not something I'm used to. I've worked with bookkeeping services before, and I've never had the same level of reporting before. I was having to dive through, sort through all kinds of spreadsheets, and yes, they're there if I need them, but
Right.
it's awesome to have that monthly snapshot
Right.
of, the P&L and balance sheet kind of all together to see where our business is. So, um, that's been fantastic. So,
Yeah.
Khristine, thank you so much for
Thank
spending
you.
your time with us today.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to the listener out there, don't forget to check out our website, adversity2abundance.com, the number 2, adversity2abundance.com. And thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.